I was able to play as much Ultimate Frisbee as I wanted to. That was great, and a lot of times with the kids, the first couple weeks that off was before school started for them, and so that's a sport that all three of my kids and I enjoy playing.
For our Family Fi segment, we're talking about achieving financial independence with kids. Now, a lot of people think that you have to choose one or the other. You can't have financial independence if you want to have kids, or you can't have kids if you want to have financial independence. Well, our guest today is going to share his path to financial independence with kids. Kyle Landis-Marinello is my guest today. Kyle lives in Vermont with his fantastic partner, 3 wonderful kids, and an amazing dog. He is a practicing attorney specializing in environmental and energy law. He recently transitioned from one job to another, but took a mini retirement in between. Today, we're going to chat all about his mini retirement and some advice for other families who maybe want to do the same. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for being here. I was glad to meet you at a conference earlier this year, so I'm glad we get to bring your story to life here on the podcast. It's a treat for me. Thank you very much for doing it. Now, a lot of people don't do mini retirements, or not a lot of people even know what a mini retirement is. So how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so I did a deep dive into the world of personal finance a few years ago. And, even just 3-4 years ago, this concept wasn't really talked about a whole lot. But boy, in the last year or two, it has come to the forefront, and with good reason. And I think it's something that doesn't get as much attention as it should, because I think it's a really important part of the journey towards financial independence. And when I heard about it, I knew it was something I wanted to try. And then this job change came about, and it presented a perfect opportunity for it.
I love that. Now, you talked about your path to family financial independence. So I know mini retirements are a part of that. What other parts do you see in the future outside of mini retirements as well?
Yeah, I think that for us, a lot of it is just getting a plan in place. And that's a long process. I think some people think, oh, I just sit down, create a spreadsheet, and we just follow it from there out. But things change all the time, especially when you have a family, and a big family like ours with 3 kids. There are a lot of moving pieces and new expenses that can come up on a moment's notice. And so you always have to be ready to move things around and change the plan. But the biggest thing is having some sort of plan, some sort of process for here's how we prioritize our future selves while we're also enjoying our time together today.
I love that. I love that. Well, let's talk about the nitty gritty with this mini retirement. How do you prepare financially for a mini retirement? Talk to us about how that process went.
Yeah. So for me, it ended up being easier than I expected, because for better or for worse, I had not used much of my vacation time in my past job. And part of that was I had a very stressful, lots of responsibilities job that made it difficult to take time off. And so I built up a lot of vacation days that I hadn't used. And when I was switching jobs, I kind of looked at a calendar and saw how many vacation days I had left, and realized I could take 5 weeks off between jobs and not even miss a paycheck.
Wow. That's awesome. So this was banked up, vacation days that were allowed to you based on your job requirements that you had.
Exactly. Yep.
That's incredible. Okay. And so talk to us about what this mini retirement time, because I think a lot of people just go from work thing to the next work thing and don't really take those pauses in their life to realize what you can actually do with some time off. So talk to us about what this break was, and how long was it?
Yeah. So on your point about people going from one thing to another, that's exactly what I did the previous time I switched jobs. So about 5 years ago, I was at one job on a Friday and started at the next one on a Monday. And it was actually even worse than that, because I had been working at the Vermont Attorney General's office, and part of my caseload at the time was a criminal jury trial that I was prosecuting with co-counsel. The timing of that trial ended up being 2 weeks into my new job. So my first 2 weeks at the new job, I was still preparing for, and then going to that jury trial, and effectively doing 2 jobs at once, right as I'm trying to learn a new position. And so I knew I didn't want to make that mistake again. I wanted to really give myself time and feel refreshed when I started my new job this time around. So I ended up taking 5 weeks, and the first week was a planned vacation that we had had on the calendar for a while to go to Michigan and visit some friends there. And then the second week was a trip that kind of came together at the last minute with some kayaking friends of mine from high school and college days. And so I did that trip solo. And then had 3 weeks after that where I was at home without any job responsibilities. And I focused on doing some decluttering during that time. And I did the Marie Kondo thing with my clothes, and I went through a number of boxes, including a box from our move 10 years ago that I had thought was filled with papers that were so important they couldn't even go in the moving truck. They had to travel in our car when we came to the new house. And then the box just sat in a corner for 10 years till I finally had time to get around to looking through it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So some family vacation time, some friend solo vacation time, and then some decluttering. Now I have a question for you because this happens to me sometimes. I end up getting a little bit of free time, where maybe I'm not needed as a dad or a husband or a worker. And then I get that free time. And then my instinct is like, well, I should probably do some more work. Did that ever happen to you? During that time? We were like, maybe I should prepare for my work that's coming up, or I should do some work to prepare. Did that happen to
Yeah,
you?
it did not, but that has happened to me many times in the past. And I think the reason it didn't happen this time is because when I finished work at my previous job, I deleted my work email from my phone. I deleted Microsoft Teams from my phone. I was completely done. And my new job wouldn't start until I showed up on the first day. And so it really created this space that was entirely different from past time off I had had, where, the usual scenario is if you have a week off, you end up working about 60 or sometimes even 70 hours in the lead up to get everything ready to be able to take
Yes.
time off. And then you come back and you're working long hours to make up for stuff that arrived while you're away. And so, yeah, a time between jobs is really special, and it's something I think people should look for, and if you and advocate for, and if you get it, protect that time and really enjoy it.
I think that's fantastic because that's such a good point. I remember taking time off of work and taking that week off, and yeah, it's like you got to do all the things to prepare, and then you come back and it's a crazy workload that you got to catch up on. It's like, was that vacation worth it at that point? You know what I mean? So yeah, this time in between jobs is fantastic. Now, let's talk to the person who maybe is listening and saying, well, I don't have that many vacation days banked up. You talk about personal finance a lot. I know you write about it too. What can somebody do to kind of create their own version of a mini retirement like you have?
Yeah, I think that there are ways to do it. I mean, obviously, looking for times like if you're changing jobs, that creates a great opportunity. But if you're in the same job and you're going to be in it, I think you can negotiate how many days off you have. A lot of people think they can't. And even in more formal settings like state government, where I worked for 15 years, people think there are set policies that can't be negotiated. But if you have a good relationship with your boss, you can usually figure out a way to get a break. And I think the key is to really make it a break. And so make sure the people who report to you, the people you report to, know that you're going to be unavailable during that time. And, I remember when I was working at my past job, I took a vacation at one point and I pulled up my auto reply on email, and I had always typed in I'm away until such and such date, and may not be available or something like that. And at one point, I decided to take a little more ownership of it and just put on the auto reply, and I will not be checking email during this time. And, it's something that I think the work world discourages because people think you need to be
Hmm.
available all the time. But I think that's all the more reason to take ownership and tell people, no, this is my time. If it's really important, I'll get back to you when I'm back.
I love that, man. That's fantastic. Now you were at home for 5 weeks, on and off between your vacations and things like that. What did this mean for your relationship with your wife and your kids? Was this too much dad at home, or was this a good amount of dad? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, yeah, it was a constant thing to navigate because it was new. We had done trips together, but this 3 week period when I was home without work obligations was a new thing for me, and it was new for the family. And uh, as my wife would be quick to say, decluttering was new as well, because that's not
Mm-hmm.
something I'd prioritized before. And it is a tricky process because it's not like you open up a box and immediately everything is sorted and in a better place. You often have to spread it out on the floor. And we live in a small house. There's not a lot of open areas to take over. And it makes more of a mess during the process. And same with when I organized all my clothes and did the Marie Kondo thing and took everything out of my drawers, out of the closet, put it all in her bed, and then realized, uh-oh, we have to sleep in this bed tonight. That means I've got a clock on when I get through this. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be a problem. And so that was a constant thing to navigate that I think I was expecting my family to be really supportive of me doing those efforts. And in the long run, and generally they were, but there were also these times where my wife would quite appropriately point out, Kyle, we got to walk through this area. If you could move things over to the side, that would be really helpful. And yeah, and the other thing that would happen is my wife is often bringing the kids to many different activities, and suddenly I was available, and that was great. We were able to share those roles, and it did give me some time in the car with kids that I hadn't had before. And it also provided a lot of time for self reflection because, I had done a lot of learning about the personal finance world and retiring early, and even to the point of writing a book on that topic. A lot of it was very theoretical because I'm still a long ways away from retiring myself. And so having this time for self reflection and really allowed me to think more about this is what I'm going for. I want this time where I don't have work obligations, and it's going to take many more years to get there, but it's worth it. And I kind of understood that at a much deeper level when I experienced this time off without work obligations, as opposed to just reading or listening about that.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, those are good moments. And you mentioned time for self
Mhm.
reflection. Did you have some time to, focus on your health as well? Obviously, self reflection and self care like that is very important. Did you have time to focus on your health as well?
Yeah, I was able to play as much ultimate frisbee as I wanted to. That was great, and a lot of times with the kids, the first couple weeks that off was before school started for them, and so that's a sport that all three of my kids and I enjoy playing, and so it was great to do that, to go for as walks with the dog and just stay out as long as I wanted because I didn't have to get back in time to get to work by a certain time. And so yeah, there was definitely more time for that as well.
I love that. Well, there's somebody listening right now and they're hearing your message, Kyle, and they're saying, yeah, I am not utilizing all of my vacation days that I have banked up. And, it's really hard for me to break away though, because I'm so needed at work. What would you say to this person as they're feeling your message, but also feeling that pull back to the office?
Yeah, I think that you know, a lot of people are in jobs for many different reasons. It's not just for a paycheck. The career path that I chose passed on jobs that would have paid literally 4 or 5 times as much as I got working in state government, because I really cared a lot about public interest work and environmental work and leaving the world a better place. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Their jobs are really meaningful and they contribute a lot to it. But I think you also do have to remember at the end of the day, it's just a part of who you are. It's not your whole self. And especially for the listeners of this podcast, people who have partners and children, comes first. It should be what comes first. And I know it is for you, Andy, and it is for me. And so I think just reminding yourself of that work will figure it out. They always do. People come and go everywhere, even the most important people at an agency organization come and go. And so you need that time to take off for yourself, and you'll actually come back refreshed and able to contribute more to the workplace. And there's lots of data, lots of studies that back that up.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here, everybody. Use those vacation days from Kyle here. This is awesome. Kyle, you also talk to us about this book that you wrote, and tell people where they can get it and what it's called.
Sure. I wrote a book. It's called Personal Finance and Investing. Not the most creative title now that I look back at it. It's available wherever books are sold. I always encourage people to go to their local bookstore, and you can order it there and support local bookstores, but you can get it on online websites as well. And yeah, it was a process for me of just doing all this deep dive into the research of personal finance and kind of learning everything I could about it. And as I reflected on it, realizing I had some stories to tell from my upbringing. And in particular, my dad is this incredible example of someone who is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. He went to Harvard at the age of 16, yet he has made just about every financial mistake you could make. And Andy, as we're recording this, actually, today is his 79th birthday. And
oh, that's incredible. Happy birthday, Dad.
Yeah. And he's wonderful. He was an absolutely wonderful parent, continues to be a wonderful parent and grandparent. And we have a great relationship. You know, he's still working at the age of 79. And part of that is that finances were never a focus for him. And I use some stories from my childhood and even up to present day where you have this person who's just as brilliant as can be, and yet when it comes to finances, a lot of it's hard, and the system is set up to take advantage of everyone, to get people to pay more in credit card debt and loan servicers, payday loans. There's all sorts of things that are set up so that people lose money if they're not really on top of it. And so I try to use his message as kind of a way of telling people there's no shame if you've made mistakes along the way. If you're continuing to make mistakes, everyone does. And here are some ideas of how to get things back on track.
Well, I love that. Yeah, I think we all have different strengths in different areas of our lives. And, you know, not everybody has this financial strength muscle to try to fight back all of the consumeristic messages and all the big old companies that know how to get the money out of our pockets. So, you know, happy birthday to Dad. And Kyle, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Glad to be on, and thanks for doing this. It's a great show, Andy.